welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and I'm excited today to be diving back into the playthrough of Spider-Man versus Rhino. And in this one, I really need to make sure that the threat doesn't mount up to 7. It's currently on its way up, and Rhino, if it reaches 7, will win the game. Of course, if Spider-Man's health drops to 0, we also lose, and Rhino wins. I have currently stunned Rhino, so Rhino's going to be a little less useful coming up in the next villain phase, but he's thrown villains at me, one of which is guarding and stopping me from going straight at Rhino with damage. I have to get rid of this Hydra mercenary first, but I've also got a Hydra bomber here that I have to deal with, all the while trying to keep the threat under control. I have 5 cards in hand. We're going to go ahead and begin it off with the player phase. One thing to note that's very important strategy-wise is that Rhino is stunned, but all this is going to do is stop the next time he would attack me. This card gets discarded instead. It doesn't stop him from scheming. So I have to be a little bit strategic in terms of what I want to do, in terms of what form I want to be in at the end of my turn. Of course, depending on my plan, I may not have much choice. The first thing I'm going to do on my turn is I'm going to attach the Spider Tracer card to Hydra Bomber. We've seen this before where it allows me to attach it to a minion and then I can kill that minion to then use a forced interrupt to take threat off the main scheme or a side scheme if I so choose. So that's pretty awesome. But the only thing is, based on the cards in my hand, I have to give up this card called For Justice. We've used another iteration of this card earlier because there's a couple in the deck here. And in this case, I'm going to spend that card to generate the resource this needs to actually attach to the Hydra Bomber. Now, the crazy thing is with that is that For Justice is actually technically a better version of this card, because when I use this, although it does cost 2 resources to make this happen, with Peter Parker's additional resource that it can generate, or he can generate, if I had him flipped over to the other form, I could pull 4 threat from the scheme. The downside is, though, I don't have the cards in hand to pull the For Justice one off. I'm trying to use resources smartly and also get some other cards that are going to help me out down the line, so I'm going to have to suck it up and take 3 threat off versus 4. So I've gone ahead and paid for the Spider Tracer now. I've attached it to the Hydra Bomber. I'm happy about that. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have Spider-Man make an attack against this Hydra Bomber. But just before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and actually spend the Helicarrier, which is actually a fantastic card. If I had got this earlier, I absolutely would have had the time to get this into play. But this one is really good. It allows you max 1 per player in your deck. Action, exhaust the Helicarrier, choose a player, and reduce the resource cost of the next card that player plays by 1. Now, my assumption would be if you're playing solo, you could actually do that on yourself. That would be very useful. I'm going to use it, though, to spend to equip what's called Web Shooter. This only costs 1, so that's why I'm getting rid of the Helicarrier as a resource, and this is going to come into play as an upgrade for me for Spider-Man. And with that is going to include 3 tokens to track, because when I'm in hero form as a hero resource, I can exhaust Web Shooter and remove 1 web counter from it to generate a resource, which is fantastic. The Web Shooter is now equipped. I've got 3 markers on it. You'll also notice when I mentioned the resource, I didn't tell you what type of resource I generate. It's a wild resource, meaning any type of resource that comes up in the game that I need to spend, this can work. And I have to exhaust the card to get the 1 resource, meaning I can use it once around, unless I have some really cool ability somewhere to unexhaust cards. This will be a once around thing. The last thing I have in my hand, which I could do or play out of my hand, would be Swinging Web Kick. But as we know, it needs 3 resources, and I don't have enough, even if I flipped over to the other side for Peter, and then I flipped and used one of the Web Shooters. That would generate 2 resources, but not enough to get the Swinging Web Kick in play. So I'll hold on to it for now. Another major thing I wanted to mention from the last video that some people caught, and I was actually quite embarrassed that I actually did this because I've never done it before on off-camera plays, but I used Swinging Web Kick not as a hero the first time I used it. I actually used it when I was Peter Parker the very first time. That was an accident. I meant to be flipped over to Spider-Man's side when I did, so I do apologize for that. But later in the video, when I used the Swinging Web Kick again, I made sure and knew I had to be in Spider-Man's form to do that. So a key thing to look at on cards is whenever it mentions the word hero or alter ego, make sure you're in that form before you go ahead and actually activate that particular action. All right, so now Spider-Man is going to swing into action and actually do some damage against one of these minions. I'm going to have Spider-Man exhaust at this point in order to attack. To attack on his card, he's going to attack the Hydra Bomber because we have this Spider Tracer attached now. It's going to hit for 2, which means the Hydra Bomber is going to be killed off, which is fantastic. And then this is going to trigger as a force interrupt. So when attached minion is defeated, remove 3 threat from a scheme. Well, I know exactly what scheme I'm choosing because it's the only one in play. So 3 of these threat tokens are removed from this. This is definitely going to help us out, keeping Rhino from scheming his way to victory. And I'm now going to end my turn off. I'm actually not going to flip over to my alter ego Peter Parker. Now, I really wanted to in a way because it would up my hand size and could get more cards in my hand to use for more resources and whatnot, but I want to try to avoid having Rhino just ramp up the threat on me again, because remember, even though I stunned him, he can still go ahead and scheme. A stun only stops attacks. So I'm going to keep him in this attacking mode because I'll be in hero form and his stun card will just go away. So first off, to finish my turn, being that I'm ending right now, I can choose to discard any number of cards. I'm not going to, keeping that swinging web kick. I'm drawing up to my hand size at this point, which we know is 5, but I have 1 card in hand. So we'll grab 4 cards and see what I land here. There we go. We got ourselves an ally. Finally, somebody to help us, Jessica Jones. It says Jessica Jones gets +1 thwart for each side scheme in play. Well, that's not really useful right now, but hey, the attack's pretty good. Next up, we have Aunt May. Wow, everyone's coming out of the woodwork now to help us. We got a support card. This is an alter ego action. Exhaust Aunt May to heal 4 damage. That is huge. And it's cheap. So that's another really cool thing. By just paying the 1 support, bam, I've got Aunt May in there, and that's going to keep me in a mode where I can start attacking Rhino and not worrying as much when I get hit from damage. So that's an important one to get out, I think. Next one here, we have, oh, that's huge with the cards we're getting right now. So we got an energy card here. This is a double resource card. That's going to be fantastic as well. And look at that, another web shooter. If we really want, this is going to work out pretty good, I think. So we might be able to pull something off here now with all the different resources I've managed to put into play here. This is pretty good. So at this point now, we're going to ready up all of our cards and we're going to be moving into the villain phase. So 1 threat will be going back onto the main scheme for a total of 2, and the villain now is, being that I'm in hero form, going to engage me in battle, going to try to attack me. Rhino cannot attack, he's stunned, so the next time he's going to attack, which will be right now, this gets discarded instead. So this stunned is now gone, which means he's coming at me full steam next time, but this Hydra mercenary still can attack me, so it's going to hit me for 1 damage. I can choose to straight up defend it right now, but I'd like to keep Spider-Man active for the next turn so that I can actually hit him back. So I don't mind taking that 1 hit, especially knowing now that we have Aunt May in the background here helping us out with health once I get her in play. Next up, we're going to draw an encounter card. This is what's going to throw things on me. My plan's going to probably go right out the window. Oh, look at that. Advance. That's no fun. Treachery. So when revealed, the villain schemes. That's brutal. Now, this is another thing I want to correct from the very first video. The first time that I pulled this thing, I just put a threat, I believe, onto the main scheme based on the scheme value of Rhino. But one thing to be absolutely 100% clear about is anytime your villain is scheming or attacking, it always gets a boost card. So that's something to definitely note. So that's unfortunate. He's going to get a boost card right now to scheme away at me. So we'll see how much it goes up by 1, 2... Oh, wow, that's a huge jump. An extra 2, that's going to be a total of 3. That is a lot. So that pretty much just wiped away everything that we did, and now he's up to 5. So things just swung pretty violently, and we're coming back to the player turn, which is Spider-Man. Going into this player phase, things are quite a bit more difficult to choose from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend my web shooter card for its resource on the bottom here. I really wanted to actually get that into play, but instead I just think that overall Aunt May is going to be a better situation for me, being that I want to stay in hero form. In most cases, I want to stay in hero form right now because the threat has just jumped up so high that I don't want him scheming. That's very scary to me right now. So I have put Aunt May into play, but again, I can't actually use Alter Ego as an action exhauster yet until I flip my form over to Peter Parker, which I could do during this turn, but again, I don't want to just yet. So really, I'm just getting her into play for a future turn because I'm choosing to stay in Spider-Man's form at the end of this round, which means I'm going to take some hits from some people. So that one's resolved. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and get a hero into play. So I'm going to spend one of these counters here for the web shooter that I have, giving me a wild resource. This gets turned sideways and exhausted because I can't use it again. I'm going to spend energy for 2 resources right here, and this is going to get me in the first ally that I've had actually in a while. So Jessica Jones is going to add to the fray here. I'll put her right here. I might have to do a little bit of organization here in terms of where I place my cards here to keep everything on screen. We'll go like this. So as of right now, I've got her in play, and I could technically use her. Now, she could go ahead right now and attack the mercenary. I could also thwart. So that's kind of the fun thing, is trying to figure out how I want to go about this. I'm very, very scared being at 5, that with only 2 more to go on that could really be a problem for me. But I would love to get rid of this last Hydra Mercenary because he's guarding Rhino. I can't go after Rhino until the Hydra Mercenary is gone. But his 1 damage is pretty pathetic. And now that I have Aunt May, I'm not so concerned about taking that hit. So it's a tough call as to whether I should double up thwart here and do a thwart and a thwart for both and take 2 threat off, or do 1 thwart and 1 damage and get rid of the Hydra Mercenary just so I can get to Rhino when I want to. So I'm going to risk it. It's going to be kind of a dicey situation here, but I'm going to go ahead and use Spider-Man here. And Spider-Man is going to do the attacking to kill off the Hydra Mercenary. So this mercenary is gone now. Got way more attack on that than I needed. And then Jessica Jones is going to go ahead and thwart. Now the great thing is, if I had actually it's really sad, if I had more side schemes in play, her thwart goes up, which would be nice. But it's just going to be a generic 1. But she does take a hit for doing that to help me. So she is on her way to being knocked out herself. So 1 of these disappears, but hey, that might keep me out of danger zone. And again, I have a choice to flip forms if I want to. I'm not going to, so I am going to end my turn here. I still have swinging web kick. Now I have the availability to actually use it because no one's guarding Rhino. And we're going to end off the player phase by I'll keep the cards I have in hand. We're going to draw up to our hand size, so I get 4 more cards. So I pulled out Emergency. Sounds like something I need right now. This is a thwart card. It says Interrupt. When the villain schemes, reduce the amount of threat placed on the scheme by 1. That's huge. It's a 0 card. 0 cards are fantastic because you can throw that right in with it's an interrupt, so you can put it in right away. That's a good one to have. The Power of Justice, double the number of resources the card generates while paying for a Justice card. That could be good, depending on which Justice cards I'm trying to get into play. Next card up, we have Haymaker. It's an event. Hero action, deal 3 damage to an enemy. That could be really good if we get more minions into play, or if I want to do a last hit on Rhino. Again, only 1 resource to discard though. And finally, the last card, Surveillance Team. Use 3 Snoop counters or universal markers. Enters play with 3 of them, and when those are gone, the card's gone. Action, exhaust the team and remove 1 Snoop counter from it. Remove a threat from the scheme. So that's a good one for mitigating the amount of threat piling up on the main scheme. So those are some good options there. So that is going to do it for my turn, and of course we're going to ready up now, and then we're going to move into the villain phase and see how things go. So 1 threat is going to go back onto the main scheme, bringing it up to a total of 5, which is where it was before. Now we're really crossing our fingers here that everything pans out. And I'm still in Spider-Man's form, so Rhino's going to attack me. Now I'm definitely going to take this time to put myself in defensive mode because I don't want to take too much damage, and I kind of want to stay into Spider-Man's current form as much as I can. This will block 3 of the attack that Rhino gets, but this next card coming up is going to throw a wrench into things. So I'm going to go ahead here and grab his boost card and see what happens. All right, just 1. That's perfect. So what's going to happen is we're going to tick ourselves down by 1, so not a bad hit. And the great thing is now it's really worth it for Aunt May to come in and heal for 4 at some point when I'm in my alter ego state, because I can get myself almost back up to max. So I'm in that great window where it's very much worthwhile. Next up, now that that has been resolved, is we're going to go ahead and deal an encounter card. This is the one that I'm a little bit more scared of. Again, Spider-Man actually was attacked here, so I should have drawn a card. I've done this a number of times incorrectly, so what ends up happening timing-wise here is when the boost card comes out for Rhino, it sits like this, and at this point in time, Spider Sense would trigger the interrupt to allow me to draw first. So I'd actually get to draw this card first, and I get to keep that card. It's a black cat, so that's pretty awesome, a new ally, but it's not going to help me, and it doesn't change the game state because it wasn't anything I could use to stop this boost anyway, but it's good to know that I get the card. But sometimes it could. There might be a card that might be able to do that. So same thing happens that already happened, but in terms of timing, that's when the spider sense happens. That's probably the one I forget to do at the exact right moment the most. Okay, so now with that all said and done, we are now going to go ahead and deal with the encounter. This is the one that I'm terrified about because this always seems to throw a huge wrench into things. So here we go. That doesn't look good at all. So armored Rhino suit attached to Rhino. That is not what we want to see right now. Forced interrupt. When any amount of damage will be dealt to Rhino, place it here instead. Then, if there's at least 5, discard this Rhino suit. Well, that's unfortunate because now he is technically 20 health. That is ridiculous. So I'm just going to attach it like this because the bottom part of his card now does not matter anyway. We've already dealt with the when revealed portion. So that's pretty brutal. Things just got a lot more tough, and now we definitely need to use that swinging web kick, and maybe the punch will help too. But at least we didn't see any more threat come out, so that was a plus. So with all that said now, we have gone ahead and dealt with everything that we should have. Of course, Jessica Jones should have been unexhausted here at the end of the last player phase, and I didn't do that. But I did actually go ahead with Spider-Man and defend. So he is going to remain exhausted, and we're going to move into the player phase. The very first thing I'm going to do on my turn is use my web shooter. So I'm going to exhaust it, take off one of the counters, and I'm going to use that wild resource along with my haymaker. Even though I love the card, I want to get another ally out here to help me. So the haymaker is going away for its 1 resource, so that generates 2, which allows me to put Black Cat into play. And Black Cat says, force responds after you play Black Cat. Discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Add each card with a printed mental resource discarded this way to your hand. So I could get really lucky right now and see some cards actually go back into my hand. Like, here's hoping. So the first one here is, in fact, a mental resource. So I get to keep Enhanced Spider Sense. That's great. That's going to give me some more options this turn. Let's keep that idea going. Let's see if we get another one the same way. We did. We got the Avengers Mansion. That was perfect planning, actually. I had no idea that would happen at all, and that works out flawlessly for me. So that's great. The next action I'm going to choose to do is to play another card. I'm going to try to get Surveillance Team into play here. I think this is going to be really useful. In order to do so, I need to generate 2 resources. So I'm going to use the Power of Justice card that I have. Double the number of resources this card generates while paying for a Justice yellow card. Ha! Perfect. So I've got that Surveillance Team in now, and I'm going to get 3 tokens on that particular card, which is going to help me out. And I can use these with an action, exhaust it, and remove 1 threat from a scheme. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I'm just going to take one of these counters off, exhaust the card, and we're going to take 1 threat right off the main scheme, which is fantastic. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to have Jessica Jones and Black Cat activate. We're going to go ahead and exhaust both of them, so that's going to make them have 1 hit each. I'm going to use them for thwarting, so they're both going to take a hit, so 1 to her and 1 to her. She's almost gone. Actually, both of them are almost gone now. Oops, that was a 3. We want that to be a 1. So there we go. That's 2 thwarts up against this main scheme, which is fantastic because now we've gone from it being a very dire situation to one that's a little bit more manageable. And this is the reason why now I think I can flip forms back to Peter Parker and heal up while I have the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to flip over to Peter Parker's side. The wonderful thing too is that it does technically generate a resource, which I could have used this turn. And sadly, I don't have anything else I really want to use per se. Just debating here. I do have the Avengers Mansion, but I have so many cards that are good for reactionary effects against Rhino when he comes out with some nasty stuff here. So I'm not gonna use it. But what I am going to do is going to use Aunt May right now. It says exhaust Aunt May and heal 4 damage from Peter Parker. So this is a pretty quick exhaustion. She doesn't take any damage. This is just a straight up alter ego thing to do. So I bump myself from 5 all the way up to 9, which gives me the ability to stay in Spider-Man form later on a little bit longer, which is fantastic. So with that all said and done, I think I'm going to finish off my turn. I'll let you know what I have in my hand still. I have 4 cards. I still have the Avengers Mansion, and I have this emergency card for interrupting when there would be threat thrown onto the main scheme. I have the enhanced spider sense to stop any when revealed effects that I don't like. And I also have swinging web kick. So I think I'm going into this villain phase pretty prepared, and then hopefully next turn I can just unload a whole bunch of damage on Rhino if I get lucky here. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and draw cards into my hand. I'm ending my turn now, and I'm Peter Parker alter ego form, so 6 cards I get to have in hand. I have 4 currently. I'm keeping all 4 of them, and I'm going to go ahead and drop 2. I only have 1 card left in my player deck, so you're probably wondering what will happen when I can't draw anymore. I'll tell you in a second, but first, Heroic Intuition. Play under any player's control, max per player, 1 per player. Your hero gains +1 thwart, so that's pretty good. So that's going to go into my hand. Now, right now, I would go ahead and try to draw another card, but I can't because there isn't anything here. So what happens is you take your discard pile, you shuffle this pile all the way up, and then immediately draw an encounter card. Now I've gone ahead and shuffled up the player deck. I'm ready to draw my next card. As I mentioned already, you have to pull an encounter card immediately, but you do get to draw up the remaining cards that were owed to you from your player deck. So I'm going to go ahead right now and grab the last card here. And I got myself Backflip. That's fantastic and absolutely perfect. But I have to go ahead now and pull an encounter card because of the fact my deck depleted. So this is kind of an extra one to throw at me. This should be quite interesting. So let's see what happens. Ooh, what is this? Shadow of the Past is a treachery card. When revealed, reveal your set-aside nemesis minion and put it into play engaged with you. Well, that doesn't sound good because I know where that's coming from. Reveal your set-aside nemesis side scheme and put it into play. Shuffle the rest of your set-aside nemesis encounter set into the encounter deck. If your nemesis minion does not enter the game this way, this card gains Surge. Well, that didn't turn out so well, did it? The Shadow of the Past brought out Vulture, which is going to come into play right away engaged with me. We'll have to deal with the Quick Strike ability on him, which is going to have him attack me right out of the gates, which is not fun. Then we're going to be shuffling 3 Treachery cards into our encounter deck, which is not good. And then also adding the side scheme into play, which is also not good. The worst part about all this is so far during this entire video, I've stayed in the hero form and was ready when I finally received this card, I believe it was last turn, was very excited to use it. But I'm in Peter Parker alter ego form right now, and this literally would have been the perfect time to be in Spider-Man's form, so I could go ahead and cancel a when revealed effect card like this one. So because I can't do that, all of this is going to happen. So Vulture is going to come into play engaged with me. It's going to quick strike me, and I'm going to deal with that in a second. These 3 are going to get shuffled into the encounter deck, and this side scheme is going to get set up in the display. Now, the other crazy thing to remember is we're not even in the villain phase yet. We're still in the player phase. I was just drawing cards up into my hand, and because I depleted my player deck, this is the penalty for that. I drew an encounter card, and look what happened to me. All kinds of craziness changed in 1 card. So I now have a nemesis card that's been brought into play engaged with me, and as soon as it's engaged with me, it attacks me. It's going to attack me for 3, so right into the gates, I'm going to go from 9 down to 6 and take a good hit. That was not good. On top of that, we've got a side scheme in play now, Highway Robbery. It says, when revealed, which is right now, each player places a random card from their hand face down here. So I'm literally shuffling my hand of cards right now, and you can see we get those cards back once we go ahead and defeat this side scheme. So really what's happening here is the card, or this particular side scheme, basically steals a card from you and keeps it at ransom, really hoping it's not what I want to have right now. And then if you defeat the side scheme, you get it back. The even worse thing that it does is it has this acceleration icon, and what that means is every single time you'd put a threat marker at the very beginning of the villain phase on the main scheme, you know how it's always 1? Well, now it's 2. So it's going to just pump up the amount of threat being put on the scheme until that thing is out of there. Not good. Okay, so I've shuffled up my cards. I'm going to go ahead and draw the second one from the beginning. We'll see what I get. Okay, so it took away emergency from me. So we're going to go ahead. It's a random card. It's going to be over here. I don't get this right now, so I'll go ahead and just place it right here. It doesn't say whether I can reveal it or not, but I know what the card would have been anyway. So actually, maybe what I'll do is I will tuck the card underneath the side scheme like so. That way, as soon as it's removed, I will just gain it back. Okay, now also this particular highway robbery card comes into play with a set number of threat on it based on the number of players. In this case, it's going to be 3. So I'm going to grab 3 tokens, like so, and we're going to place these 3 tokens on here. So now we have another wonderful pile of threat to deal with. And finally, to end off the player phase, all of my cards are refreshed to be used again in the following player phase. And we're going to be going into the villain phase now. You can see this is kind of ramping up pretty aggressively. I've got a lot to deal with. So we'll go ahead and just kind of resituate my cards here. I think I'm quite happy with this now. I got a decent amount of allies in here, which is quite nice, but still lots going on. So we move on to the villain phase, and wonderfully, because the side scheme acceleration is in place, I'm jumping this thing up to 4, which is not good. I don't know why I put a 1 in there when I could have just done this. There we go. We got 4 on the main scheme now. That is not good at all. Oh, this is going to be a really tough one. Okay, so again, I'm in Peter Parker's form now, so this is even worse for me based on what just happened. Oh, this could be really, really bad. Okay, so what I'm just realizing now is the scheming now from Rhino is 1. I get a boost card from Rhino, which is going to up that, plus 1 here from Vulture. Do I have anything that could potentially slow this down when it happens? Oh my gosh, I just realized the game has completely messed me over. And you know how? It took the only card that I have that could potentially stop me from essentially saving myself. So this card right here, the emergency card that got snatched away from me by my nemesis, literally said interrupt when the villain schemes reduce the amount of threat placed in the scheme by 1. This could be the card that I need to keep me alive, but I don't have it anymore as it's underneath this side scheme, unfortunately, and because of that, I could lose the game right now. That was my one saving grace that I had in my hand to stop anything nasty from occurring. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and flip over this boost card. I'm going to quickly take a look at some of my cards here to see if I have anything that could help me out. Nope, nothing at all that could trigger right now. Nothing in my hand. I only have backflip for damage avoidance. I have the ability to stop treachery cards, but that's not going to help me right now when it's a boost for scheming. So this could be a make or break. This needs to be a blank or I lose. If it's anything more than a blank, I lose the game. So here we go. Oh, and ironically, it's an explosion card too. It's double, so it's 1, 2, 3, and then we add 4 for Vulture. That is a ton of threat, and thanks to the Nemesis coming out, this thing just went way overkill on me, and I have lost the game. What a crazy turn of events, and I was starting to feel it there as I was going through the video, especially at the beginning, realizing like I had this swinging web kick that I thought I could get out there, but every time the Rhino just kept throwing a different strategy at me in terms of this balance between mitigating the threat and also dealing with the minions coming at you. That's one of the things I really like about this game is just it constantly is keeping you on your toes in terms of your strategy. Like you think you have a good plan going into the next round and it takes literally one card to swing it, and you really have to be prepared for those swinging, changing occurrences. But it replicates a real actual versus or battle or two individuals going head to head very well, as you're not going to be able to anticipate absolutely every aspect of your opponent. So this is really fun, even though I lost. It makes me really want to go up against Rhino again. But anyway, that is going to conclude this particular playthrough of Spider-Man versus Rhino. Let me know what you know or what you thought about this particular playthrough in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You've obviously seen that this is not a game that you're going to win every single time. Even when playing on the regular intro scenario, there is some difficulty in here. So ramping this up to expert level would certainly be interesting. So let me know in the comments below, would you like to see potentially more of this game in the future, or have you seen enough to make a decision in your mind as to whether or not this is something that interests you? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.